In this lesson we will be discussing the row count transform. The row count transform is used to count the rows that are passed through your data flow. Wherever you place the row count transform inside of your data flow, each row that passes through will be added into a variable and which you can use anywhere else inside your package. One other nice feature about the row count transform is it can be used as a trash destination. This means that if you're testing your package and you've created all these different transforms to do certain tasks, you could put a row count transform at the very end just to run your package without actually loading any data into a table or into a file. Alright, so in this lesson we're going to create a package that counts the rows in the table called error log. We're going to place that count into a variable. Then we're going to set one of the precedence constraints in our control flow to run only when we have more than at least one row in that table, in that error log table. So let's begin. Let's create a new package in our Solution Explorer by right-clicking on SSIS Packages and saying New Package. Now let's go ahead and rename it Lesson 21 by right-clicking and hitting Rename. And we'll type this in and confirm that you do want to rename it. Hit yes. Always hit yes to that. And then our next step is going to be to create a variable. And to do that, you might not have this variable menu already up. So that if you are creating a variable, you can either select the menu that you have on the left here, or you can right-click in the design surface on the control flow and select variables, and it'll pop open that menu. We're going to discuss variables a little bit more in detail later, but for the row count transform, because we do need variables, I'm going to explain a little bit here. To create a new variable, you simply hit Add Variable here, and then it'll pop up a new variable, and it'll ask for a name. We're going to call this one My Row Count. And each variable has a scope. This one right now is scoped to the package level, which is what we want. You can scope variables to individual task level, but this is what we want for this one. And then we want our data type to be an N, so that's correct. Okay, so now we have our variable created. Let's go ahead and bring over a data flow so that we can get our row count in. Drag over a data flow task onto your screen. And then go ahead and enter the data flow, and once you've entered the data flow, bring over an OLEDB source onto your screen, and let's go ahead and double click on it to configure it. And from this point we'll create a new OLEDB connection manager to the AdventureWorks 2008 database. I simply did that by clicking New. And at this point we've done connection managers enough where I'm going to go ahead and use the default one here, the AdventureWorks that it has as a preset. So if you're unfamiliar with how to do connection managers, I'd suggest reviewing lesson 14. But that's exactly what we want this time. And then we're going to select the error log table. We're going to check out the columns. It doesn't really matter what columns we're using for this time, because we're mainly going to focus on using the row count transform. Alright, and I always suggest renaming the connection manager, so go ahead and rename this one to only say AdventureWorks 2008. You don't need your server name on there. Okay, and now we're ready to bring over a row count transform. So from your toolbox, select the row count transform and drag that over. And connect your OLEDB source to the row count transform. Once you have that connected, go ahead and open the row count editor by double clicking. And there's only one thing we really have to do here, is to tell it which variable to put the row count into. So the variable name in this case will go from the drop down box, and it'll give us this whole list of variables, and all these system variables. Well, we're looking for a user variable that we just created. So once you find the user variable called My Row Count, select that. So this variable is where our row count is going to be inserted into, which is exactly what we want. So once you have that, go ahead and click OK. And we're complete with the data flow here. Now we need to return to the data flow, to the control flow. Now that we're back into the control flow, we're going to add a script task. The script task is actually, we're not going to add any configuration to it, but that's actually what we don't, we're not digging into the script task here. We just want to use the variable that we created, the myRow count, to determine whether this script task even gets hit, if it's even executed. So we're going to connect our data flow task to our script task. Next step is going to be right-click on the precedence constraint and go into the Edit menu. In the Edit menu, we're going to change the evaluation operator to expression. And then we're going to set the expression to our row count. So we're going to tell it we want it to use the myRow count variable. This is, make sure when you're typing this in, it is case sensitive with the variable, so make sure you have that exactly how you keyed it in. What we're saying here is we only want the next task to kick off or to execute when myRow count is greater than 0. So that's what this reads. It's saying when the variable myRow count is greater than 0, then move on to the next task. And you'll see that our green arrow changed into a blue arrow, and we have the little function key here. So this is ready to go. We're ready to execute it. So to execute this package, go ahead into your Solution Explorer, right-click on the package, and say Execute. And once the package kicks off here, you'll see that it does not get to this script task. The reason it doesn't get to it is because the error log table has no rows. So this row count checked the error log table, found that there were no rows, and then went back to our inserted that into our variables. Which, if you stop the package, you can look at the variables again. And inserted that value of 0 into our variables, which then said, because of that, let's not execute the script task. So let's try and do the opposite. Let's go back into the precedence constraint editor. So let's go ahead and make the change so that we want it to say when it is equal to 0. So when it's equal to 0, go ahead and execute the next task. To do that, we do the double equals. And say OK. Let's execute the package one more time. This time I'll do it from the debug function here. This time we see that the script test did execute because the row count inserted the value of 0 into our variable. And because of that, because of our constraint we have here, that it was looking for a 0 value before it would execute the script task. So that's a neat way of using the row count transform in a different way that you wouldn't normally see. Another way that you would often see the row count transform used is to load data into a logging table. So each time that you have a package run, it could log all of the rows that were inserted into a table into a separate auditing database, which oftentimes people use to track how many inserts were done and see if there was any unusual inserts done. Alright, so now that we've learned how to use the row count transform, let's go ahead and review this lesson. Alright, so to review what we learned in this lesson, the row count transform is used to count how many rows were inserted or how many rows just passed through the data flow. So whatever point you have the row count transform in your data flow, it will count what rows have passed through at that point. What the row count transform does with that count is it sticks it into a variable so that it could be used at any point later inside the package. We also covered and we saw in our example of how to use the row count transform as a trash destination. If you notice in the data flow that we used, we didn't have a real destination. We just had a row count at the end. So that's exactly how you would use it as a trash destination as well.